Hello, my name is Don and welcome to the channel. In today's video we're talking 1022 drop-in triggers. Now we've had triggers sent in by several manufacturers. It's most of the popular ones that are on the market right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of these triggers, tell you if it has any over travel, pre-travel, creep, if they're adjustable, basically what all the specs are on it, the features. We're just going to show you what each and every one of these triggers is all about. Now guys, these were sent in to me for this video and I do get to keep them when I'm done, so keep that in mind while you're watching the video. So go grab a beer, your favorite chair, and let me take you for a walk through each and every one of these triggers so I can show you what they're all about. Stay tuned. How a trigger feels is very subjective. What one shooter likes, another shooter might not. So just for that reason, we are not going to put these triggers up against each other. I'm not going to rate these triggers by how good I think they are, because what I think and what you think might be totally different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how much pre-travel a trigger has, how much creep it has, how much over travel it has, whether or not it's adjustable, and all the features of the trigger. So that's going to be kind of the format of what we're doing here today. So hopefully you guys get a good idea on what each and every trigger does so that you can make a good decision on what trigger you might like to buy. So let's get started. So we're going to start off with the Powder River Precision single stage trigger. Now they do make this in two different models. They have the flat-faced aluminum trigger shoe, which is the one I have here. And then they have a curved polymer trigger shoe, which I also have. And they both seem like they break the same. I don't think there's any difference in the internals. I believe it's just the trigger shoe itself. So we're just going to review this one trigger. So this trigger housing is made out of polymer. Now guys, don't be afraid of a polymer housing. The BX triggers have a polymer housing, and so do the regular stock triggers. And I've got thousands of rounds through these things and I've never worn one out, so I don't see that as a problem. Now a lot of the other triggers, the housings are made out of machined aluminum, but this one is polymer. But this particular trigger has the oversized bolt hold open, the long style magazine release, it has the push style safety, it has the aluminum flat faced trigger, it has the thicker gauged ejector, and the ejector is implanted into the housing quite well, so that's not going to be moving around on you or riding the bolt, so that's a good feature. All the internals are EDM wire cut, and this is a fine trigger and it's very well made. So let's get a trigger weight measurement on this Powder River Precision single stage flat faced trigger, and then we'll get you a description on how this trigger feels. So, all right, here we go. 1 pound, 12 ounces. 1 pound, 10 ounces. 1 pound, 15 ounces. So we got an average of 1 pound, 12.7 ounces. So this is a pretty light trigger. Not a lot of movement in it either. Let's get you a description on how this feels. So there's no pre-travel. Just a little bit of creep, almost imperceivable. That reset is really, really short. Here we go again. That time I didn't feel any creep whatsoever. Now I came up off the reset on that one, so I don't know if that makes a difference or not. So let's come off the reset again. Very, very little movement. This trigger moves very little, just enough to, yeah, there was no creep in that trigger at all that time. Look at that. Look at how short that trigger is. Yeah, absolutely no creep that time. Now, what I've noticed is that sometimes in the camera here, it looks like the trigger might be creeping a little bit, but it's almost, that's when the trigger is breaking. It's hard to explain. It looks like it's creeping on the camera, but you cannot feel it because right when it might start to creep, the trigger breaks. So, you know, I wouldn't call that creep. This trigger is super sharp. It's super, it is super crisp. Here we go. Yeah. I mean, this is a very, very, you know, all these single stage triggers that I've tested so far have had, you know, very little movement to them. The Volquartsen did have a little bit of pre-travel in it, but the KIDD and the Powder River Precision have had very little movement, like maybe a millimeter. This one might have a tad bit more movement than the KIDD single stage. Very, very imperceivable if there is. Let's take a look here. Yeah. This one might move 2 millimeters where the KIDD was about 1.5, maybe a millimeter. That's not a lot of movement for a trigger. It's just enough to break off the shot, and that's about it. So this trigger is not adjustable. You cannot adjust anything on it. No pre-travel, no over-travel, or the pound, you know, the weight of the trigger cannot be adjusted. But honestly, you don't really need to. It's, in my opinion, this is how a single stage trigger should feel. Very little to no pre-travel, a crisp break, and very little over-travel and a short reset. And that's what this trigger has. So, all right, guys, that's the Powder River Precision single stage flat face trigger. Let's go to the next one. So let's take a look at the Volquartsen TG-2000. This is a single stage trigger. It is adjustable for over travel and pre-travel. You cannot adjust the pull weight. Let's take a look at what we got here. Now this does come with the optional rapid release. It's a little bit bigger magazine release. So this trigger comes in a machined aluminum housing. It has a little bit larger bolt hold open. It has the shorter magazine release, but you can get the optional rapid release, which is a larger release. We'll show you that here too. It has a push style safety. It has a semi-curved, semi-straight trigger shoe on it. The ejector is staked in there pretty good. You cannot move it. It's a very nice machined aluminum housing. All the internals are EDM wire cut. And it's just a very well-made trigger like all of Volquartsen's parts. So let me get this installed in the jig and we'll get you a pull weight and a description on how this thing feels. So the Volquartsen TG-2000 is adjustable for pre-travel and over travel, but you cannot adjust the pull weight. So after playing around with this trigger a little bit, I installed it in the Victor Company stock, and I was able to get all of the pre-travel out of the trigger. As a matter of fact, I've got this adjusted pretty much just as short as the KIDD and the Powder River Precision single stage trigger. And it's very sharp, very consistent. I'm just going to show you what I ended up with here. So we'll get a pull weight real quick. So we got 2 pounds, 0 ounces. £1 pound, 15 ounces. £1 pound, 15 ounces. So we got an average of just under 2 pounds. Now let me show you what this trigger looks like now. So we're going to apply a little pressure, watch for creep. No creep, absolutely not. There was no creep whatsoever. Very short, very sharp, very short reset. Here we go. Yeah, nothing. Just a good, sharp break. Yeah. So I did end up having to play with this trigger a little bit, but all in all, I did end up getting it to where I think it should be. Usually on a single stage, well, so when I first got this trigger, I honestly had to double check the packaging to make sure that it was not a two-stage trigger. It had a ton of pre-travel in it and quite a bit of over-travel also. Single stages don't normally feel like that. Normally a single stage feels like what we ended up with here. So no creep, no pre-travel, and very little over-travel, just enough to break the shot and reset the trigger. And that's what we ended up with here. So I was able to get this adjusted properly, and I think this ended up being a pretty dang good trigger. So this is the optional rapid release. Now you can order this trigger with this release. You can buy it separately also. So if you have a Volquartsen trigger that you would like to put this on, you can order this separately. But so the release tab is on both sides. You can release it from the left and from the right, and it's in a very good position. It works quite well. All right, let's go on to the next trigger. So now we're going to take a look at the KIDD single stage trigger. Guys, this trigger has a machined aluminum housing. We have a smaller style bolt hold open. We have the shorter magazine release in this, but you can get it in the one that follows the contour of the trigger guard here, and it's quite a bit longer. It has a push style safety. We have a staked ejector, and everything is EDM wire cut, and this is a very smooth and short trigger. Let's take a look at the weight measurement, and let me get you a description on how this trigger feels, so stand by. All right, guys, so this is the KIDD single stage trigger. We're going to get you a weight measurement. Here we go. 1 pound, 9.2 ounces. Try it again. £1, 8.7 ounces. £1, 10 ounces. So right around 1.5 pounds, this trigger is breaking as advertised. Now the movement on this trigger, I have a millimeter ruler behind the trigger. I don't know how exact this is, but we do have a millimeter ruler behind the trigger here. And it's looking like this trigger moves about 1 millimeter, maybe 1.5 millimeters at best. So this trigger does not move much at all. Basically enough to break off the shot. That's it. So let me get you an idea on what this trigger feels like. So here we go. I'm applying a little pressure. Wow. No pre-travel. No creep. No over-travel. No nothing. Let's see what the reset looks like. Look at that. Look how short that reset is. The whole movement of the trigger, the overall trigger movement is like nil. It moves just enough to break off the shot. Here we go again. Pressure. Wow, that's pretty incredible. Reset. All right, I'm going to apply some pressure. Now watch for any type of movement before this trigger actually breaks. Nothing. There's no pre-travel, no creep, no over-travel, no nothing. That's actually pretty incredible. All right, guys, well, that's the KIDD single stage trigger. Let's move on to the next one. All right, guys, so we're looking at the Timney single stage 1022-1C trigger. Now, this is the same trigger that Timney has been making for a very long time. This was one of the first aftermarket 1022 triggers available. As far as I know, Timney's been making this trigger for a very long time. I believe they've made some improvements to it over the years. This breaks at 2.7 pounds. It has the long magazine release. It has a good size bolt hold open. It has the push style safety. It has kind of a hybrid curved flat trigger. It's a good long trigger too. Nice thing about that is you can get very low in the pull and maybe get under that 200 or 2.75 pound pull weight. The ejector is not staped. The internals are EDM wire cut, and just another very well made trigger. So let's get this trigger jigged up, and we'll get you a pull weight and a description on how this trigger feels. So stand by. All right, guys, so let's get you a pull weight on the Timney 1022-1C. This is the single stage trigger. Timney's been making this trigger for a long time. And let's see what we get for a pull weight on this trigger. £2 7 ounces. £2 6 ounces. £2 9 ounces. So we got an average of 2.78, so right around 2.5 pounds. So that's pretty good. It's actually testing under what they advertise. All right, let's get you a description on how this trigger feels. All right, here we go. Pulling. It's got a little bit of creep, not much. It is a heavier trigger than the others. Here we go, we'll let it up. All right, here we go on the pull. No creep, no nothing. Very, very crisp trigger. Here we go, letting it up on the reset. So it's got a very short reset. All these single stage triggers have short resets. Here we go again, pull. Boy, I tell you, there's no nothing on this trigger. Let me see again. So the reset, you can actually feel it kind of kicking back, the trigger kind of kicking back at your finger when it resets. So here we go again, pulling. Yeah, there's no pre-travel. There's very little over travel. This trigger does feel heavier than the others though. Probably because it is. Yeah, there's not a lot going on there. Again, we have a very super short trigger. So the travel is about 2 millimeters from start to finish. When you have such a short trigger like that, there's really no room for any pre-travel, just a nice clean break and very little over travel. So again, Timney knocked it out of the park. This is another very good single stage trigger. All right, let's move on to the next one. So now we're going to talk about the Manticore from Tandem Cross. Now this is the most adjustable trigger that we have here as far as pull weight, over travel, and pre-travel. It is not adjustable for, you can't adjust the trigger shoe like you could on the Calvin Elite. But this is a very adjustable trigger. Now where the Volquartsen TG-2000, you could adjust the over travel and the pre-travel, you could not adjust the pull weight. Now this one, you can adjust pretty much everything on it. Now, this has a this is a very well-made trigger. It's very well machined. It presents very well. It has a flip style safety, so the safety is actuated this way instead of pushing on it. It has a huge paddle magazine release. It has a very large bolt hold open. This is the largest in its class. I mean, this thing is, I really like it actually. I wish some of the other triggers would incorporate something similar to this. Now granted, the larger ones on some of the other units like the Powder River Precision, that bolt hold open works really well, but this is really cool. I really like this bolt hold open. The ejector is not staked, as you can see. I don't know how big of a deal that is, but I do like it when the others, on the other units where they are staked. Sometimes when you go to install these triggers, this can flip around on you, and it makes, of course, installing it pretty much impossible. So it is nice when this this is staked. It actually looks like it's got a hole where it could be staked. All you'd have to really do is, I'm surprised they didn't do that, drill a hole into that ejector and pin it. It's got the hole for it. It's not done. It's unusual. All the internals are EDM wire cut. And we have the anodized unit, so this is red anodized, everything, of course. You can get this in black, and I believe some other colors too, blue, maybe yellow. Very, very unique, very flashy trigger. Now, this unit, in order to install it, you do have to take the safety off. You have to take the button off of the bolt hold open, but it's just a matter of screwing it on and off. It takes seconds. It's not a big deal. So it does add a little bit of time when you want to maintain your firearm, you know, to take the firearm apart, but you know, it might add a couple minutes onto disassembly of your firearm. It's really not that big a deal. So now this trigger is very adjustable, and it does come with the tools to do it. Now the weight of the trigger is done here. There's a little Allen. I'm not sure if you can see it. Yep. There's a little Allen here. You back it out, or you can, I believe backing it out makes the trigger heavier and pushing it in makes it lighter. It might be the other way around though. Make sure you read your manual when you install it. The over-travel is done on this screw right here on the trigger. And then the pre-travel is done right here. There is a little Allen that goes in on an angle, and that's your pre-travel adjustment. So it is very easy to adjust. So, all right, let's get this installed in the jig, and we'll do a pull weight test, and I'll give you an idea on what this thing feels like. So stand by. All right, guys, so let's get a pull weight measurement on this Tandem Cross Manticore. Now I'm going to go towards the lower 1/3 of the trigger, because that's probably where I would put my finger. Here we go. 1 pound, 14 ounces. £1 pound, 15 ounces. Now guys, I have this trigger as light as I could get it. Here we go again. 1 pound, 12.6 ounces. So we're right in the 2 pound area on this, a little bit below. All right, let's get you an idea on what this trigger feels like. So again, I'm gonna apply pressure, and I'll tell you what I'm feeling as I'm applying the pressure. So let's check for some pre-travel here. No pre-travel. Now this trigger is a little loose in the receiver. This is the first trigger that I've had that has been loose. Now, yeah, it's not. It's loose. I mean, it's loose in this receiver. Now, some of these triggers have been really tight, but this is the first one that I've had that was really loose. Now, all the Volquartsen, all of the Timney triggers were very tight fits, which, I mean, tighter is always better, right? This one is the first one that I've had that is loose. So now, keep in mind, once this is installed in a stock, you're probably not going to feel that at all, but it is something to consider, I guess. All right, so here we go. There is no pre-travel in this trigger. Here we go. Maybe a tad bit of creep. Let's check the reset. That's a little bit longer reset. It's not very long, don't get me wrong. But it's longer compared to some of the other triggers in the test. Here we go, I'm applying pressure. Now There was absolutely no creep that I could feel that time. Here we go on the reset. Here we go on the press. Yeah, that trigger just breaks. It's very clean. Here we go on the reset again. Here we go on the brake. I could probably take a little bit more of the overtravel out of that trigger if I wanted to, but there's not a lot of travel there to begin with. Yeah, the trigger, there's really not much to tell. It's the perfect single stage trigger, really. There's no pre-travel, really no creep that I could feel, and I could adjust a little bit more of the overtravel out of it, and I probably will. But at least on this trigger, if I want to lighten it up or make it a little heavier, I have that option. If I want to, take out the pre-travel, take out the overtravel, I have that option. And that's what's nice about this trigger. They give you the option to try and tailor that trigger to the way that you like it, because everybody has a certain way that they like their triggers, and nobody's the same. So the Manticore does give you that option. Now, let's check the safety operation. So, yeah, I mean, how would I do that? Yeah, I'd probably do that with my lead finger. And yeah, it works. It works great. It's kind of like an AR trigger, except it's forward of the trigger instead of behind it. It's very intuitive. It's very easy to actuate. I don't have to go from one side to the other when I'm actuating or taking it off. So that's kind of nice. Everything can be done from one side, no matter if you're right or left-handed. The size of the magazine release is really nice. I mean, that makes releasing the magazine very easy, very quick, and it's real easy to find. So the bolt hold open function on this trigger is one of my favorite options that this trigger has. It makes actuating the bolt hold open really easy. It's just a matter of pulling that backward and pulling that bolt back, and it holds back very easy. And then when you want to release it, you just pull back on the bolt and it releases itself. But all of these extra features that are on this trigger are for people that shoot in competition, and they're very welcome features. This is the most adjustable, most option-filled trigger in the test today, and very well thought out, and it's a very unique and very well designed trigger. So, all right, well, that's the Tandem Cross Manticore trigger. Let's go to the next one. So we're going to take a look at the Calvin Elite single stage now. Now this particular trigger is in the stainless finish. We have a decent size bolt hold open. We've got the long mag release. We've got the push style safety. The ejector is not staked. The internals are all EDM wire cut. Now this trigger is adjustable. The whole trigger itself will move forward and back on that little shaft there. The trigger shoe itself can twist to the left, it can twist to the right, and it can move up and down on that shaft. The trigger can also move that way to each side of the trigger. So I didn't know how I was going to feel about that feature, but the particular rifle that I have it installed in now, I actually tilted it outward to the right, and I find that it gives me a little bit better or more comfortable trigger position, and I get a good pull with it. So, all right, let's get this jigged up, and we'll get you a trigger weight and a description on how this trigger feels. So stand by. All right, guys, let's get a trigger weight measurement on this Timney single stage Calvin Elite. Here we go. 1 pound, 12 ounces. Wow. 2 pounds, 5 ounces. I wonder if I didn't get it in the same spot that time. 1 pound, 14 ounces. Yeah, I don't think I had it in the same spot. Let's try it again. Yeah, 1 pound, 14 ounces. I could do this all day and I'll get 1 pound, 14 ounces. It's a very, very consistent trigger. All right, let's get you a description on how this trigger feels. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of pressure on the trigger and tell you what I feel. So, all right, there's absolutely no pre-travel. This trigger is on the wall right now. It's what a single stage should feel like. Here we go, applying pressure. It just broke. I didn't really feel anything but a trigger break. Let's let up. So the reset feels a little bit longer than the other single stages that we've tried so far, but don't get me wrong, it's not long. It's still very short, but it feels a little longer than the others. So applying pressure, it just broke. No, don't feel like there was any creep in it. Let's try it again. The reset, applying pressure. Maybe felt a hint of creep that time. Let's try it again. Applying pressure. Yeah, the trigger has just a hint of creep. It's almost non-existent. A lot of these triggers feel like this. Here we go, the reset. And pressure. Yeah. Maybe just a hint of creep. That's not a bad thing. It still feels very crisp. It's a very, very short trigger overall. It does have a little bit longer reset than the others, like I said. So this trigger has a lot more adjustment than the others do. The way this trigger shoe moves in and out like this, and how you can move that shoe up and down. You can actually loosen that up and you can twist the shoe left and right. So this trigger does adjust in a lot of different ways that the other triggers do not. This trigger shoe, the trigger bar itself is, it does things that you don't normally feel on a trigger, and it's pretty unique to be able to get this type of an angle when you're pulling. You would never know what that felt like if it wasn't for the Calvin Elite trigger, because these are the only triggers that do that I know of. Another great trigger by Timney. Let's go to the next one. So I almost forgot to mention that this trigger is not adjustable for over travel, pre-travel, or the pull weight. None of that is adjustable. Just the trigger shoe and the trigger position itself is adjustable. I also wanted to show you how great this stainless trigger looks in this gray stock and stainless steel combination. With this, the gray stock, the stainless trigger, the stainless barrel, and the stainless bolt, this is a really sharp rifle. We did make some changes to this rifle. We changed the bolt, the trigger, a few different things. So we're probably going to go through this one more time and do some ammunition testing. This has the 24-inch Green Mountain barrel, and I'm quite happy with how this rifle came out. So we will be doing a little bit more testing with this rifle in a future video. So now we can go to the next trigger. All right, guys, so we're looking at the Timney 2-stage Calvin Elite trigger now. This trigger's been out for a few months, and I've got one here for the test, so that's kind of cool. Now, this housing is just like all of Timney's other housings. I'm sure they're using the same exact housings, and they're just drilling different holes through it in order to configure the different types of triggers in it. So all the internals are EDM wire cut. The ejector is not staked. The housing is well machined. And as you know, the trigger itself is adjustable, nothing else is. So you can't adjust the over travel, the pre-travel, or the trigger weight, but you can adjust the angles of the trigger. So you can adjust the main trigger here, forward and back. The trigger shaft, I should say, forward and back. The trigger itself, you can go up and down, and it twists left and right. And the trigger itself also moves in the housing like that. So I actually found a good use for this. On the precision rifle I have it in now, I actually find that I like it tilted out a little bit. Just gives me a better angle on the trigger. I didn't think I'd find a use for that, but I actually quite like it. Now, this has a little bit shorter magazine release on it, and it has a good size bolt hold open. And the rest of the trigger, it looks pretty basic. So let's get this installed and we'll get a trigger pull weight on it and I'll describe how it feels. So stand by. So let's get a trigger weight measurement on this Timney 2-stage trigger. Here we go. £1 pound, 4.9 ounces. £1 pound, 7.5 ounces. £1 pound, 5 ounces. So we got an average of £1 pound, 5.8 ounces. So about £1 pound, 6 ounces. So under a pound and a half. Let's see what we get here. So that's the first stage. Second stage. So it looks like maybe about 2 millimeters, it looks like. So not a lot of movement in this trigger either, even though it's a 2-stage. All right, so let's see what this trigger feels like. So the 2-stage doesn't feel like much. Here we go. Honestly, it feels, let's let up on this. So let's see what the reset looks like. Very super short reset. All right, here we go on the pull. Let's let up on that. Here we go again. The trigger moves so little, it just breaks. And honestly, to me, let's try that again. I don't know how to describe it. It's a great trigger. I love it. I've shot this trigger quite a bit. I just don't know how to describe it because there's just so little movement in this trigger. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, it just breaks. I don't know how to describe it. I'm kind of at a loss for words. Letting up. I mean, look at that. I mean, that thing hardly moves at all. Here we go again, pulling. The trigger, I guess, doesn't feel any different when it breaks. That's the description. The trigger doesn't feel any different when it breaks from when you are pressing on it. It you know, because it moves so little, and it just, like when a trigger breaks, normally you get a little bit of relief and a little bit of over travel, right? This one doesn't do that. It just breaks, and the trigger feel never changes. So it's a solid, you know, pound and a half feel. A very rock solid wall, and then the trigger just breaks. It's hard to describe, but that's my best description that I can give you. Now this trigger has the shorter. It's got a longer magazine release, but it's not the really long one that comes down here. It's similar to the Volquartsen magazine release, but it doesn't have the big wings on the side of it. Again, this has that push-pull safety, and the trigger shoe is extremely adjustable, like all the Calvin Elite triggers. All right, guys, well, that's the Timney Calvin Elite. Let's go to the next trigger. So our final trigger in today's video is the KIDD 2-stage. KIDD puts this in an aluminum housing. It has a larger trigger guard. It has the longer magazine release. Now you can order this with the shorter one also. It has a push style safety. It has a smaller bolt hold open. It has a pinned ejector, and everything is EDM wire cut. And this is a very sophisticated trigger. It's pretty complicated. If you feel like messing with it, there are two adjustment screws here. I don't recommend you do that. A lot of people end up playing with this and screwing up their trigger, and they end up having to send it back into KIDD. So I would suggest that you leave it alone. Now you can order this trigger in many different configurations, so I'm sure there's something that will fit your needs, anywhere from 6 ounces to I think 3 pounds. So you can get this trigger in a lot of different configurations where you shouldn't have to play with it. But yeah, you can get different trigger bows for it. They have curved, straight. I believe they have some optional ones on there too. Go to their website and check out all the different options they have for this trigger. All right, let's get this thing jigged up and we'll get you a pull weight measurement and try to describe how this trigger feels. So stand by. All right guys, let's get you a trigger weight measurement on this KIDD 2-stage. Here we go. First stage is about half a pound, so about 8 ounces. Total trigger weight, about 11 ounces. Try it again. About 10 ounces. .5 ounces. So we're right around 10-11 ounces total pull weight on this trigger. That's the first stage and the second stage combined. The first stage is about 8 ounces, at least on my trigger. Now guys, this trigger is adjustable. You can adjust the some of the features of this trigger. I don't recommend that you do that though. Unless you really know what you're doing, I would leave it alone. When you get it at the stock settings, it's pretty dang good right off the get-go, and it would be really easy to kind of screw this up. Ask me how I know. All right, so let's get you an idea on how this trigger feels. So the first stage is about, according to my little scale that I got here, is about 2 millimeters. It doesn't move a lot, and it's about 8 ounces. So here we go. So that's your first stage right there. And it does have a very solid back wall. So I'm on the wall, and it just takes very little to set that trigger off. So here we go on the reset. First stage. I'm on the back wall. I'm going to apply some pressure, and it just breaks. It's really clean, really crisp. It's really smooth. This is a very well done trigger. So here we go on the reset. First stage, back wall, applying pressure, and it just breaks. Now you've seen how little that trigger moved from when it broke to when it was fully pulled all the way back. Hardly at all. I mean, maybe a millimeter, if that. This is a very well done trigger. It's very smooth, very crisp. Very well done trigger. So here we go on the reset. There's the reset. There's the first stage. And like I said, that's about half a pound. Solid wall. And it just takes a frog fart to set it off. I mean, It breaks very easy, very cleanly. Now, KIDD offers this trigger in a ton of different configurations, different first stage weights, different second stage weights. You can get different trigger shoes, you can get, they have a ton of different ways you can order this trigger. The lightest way you can order it is a 6 ounce, so it's 3 ounces first stage, 3 ounces second stage, and they recommend that for bench rest only. This is a 1 pound, so it's supposed to have an 8 ounce first stage and an 8 ounce second stage. But I played with it a little bit, and from the looks of it, I've got a 8 ounce first stage and a 4 ounce second stage from what I can tell. Now, like I said, you can order this in many different configurations. It's a very unique trigger, and it's very well done. Alright guys, well that's pretty much it for today's video. I do want to thank every manufacturer that sent in a trigger for today's video. I greatly appreciate that. I couldn't have done this video without them contributing those triggers. That would have cost quite a bit of money. Now, if there was a trigger that you didn't see on today's video, let me know down in the comments, and I'll try and get a hold of some of these other manufacturers that we missed and see if we can get them to participate in the next video. So guys, if you'd like to support the channel, the super thanks down below here on YouTube, that's a good way to do it. I do have a Patreon, I have a Buy Me a Coffee, and I do have a link tree. All that stuff's down in the description. If you did want to help support the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Well, that's pretty much all I got for you today. So if you like what you saw, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you like what I'm doing here, go down there and subscribe, guys. I could use your help building this channel. I can't do it without you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.